Welcome back to page 121, or welcome to page 121. If you're a new viewer who tuned in to take a look at the comic I'm going to take a look at, actually the set of comics I'm going to take a look at, beginning with Kryptonite Nevermore from January of 1971. This began a connected run of Superman that is still probably my favorite Superman story arc. And I want to take a look at the books themselves that compiled this and what brought it on and why they are the new adventures of Superman. So today on page 121, Kryptonite Nevermore and the beginning of the Superman Sandman saga. Welcome back to page 121. I say that a lot. I want to explain what that means. That's the name of my channel. I take a look at role-playing stuff, primarily Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition and Traveler, all editions. In addition to that, I take a look at comic books. So I'm a comic book collector of 50 years. I've been a role player for over 40. The two together are great hobbies, and I've often mixed comic books into my role-playing stuff. In fact, I have a few videos up about that in other parts of the channel. But today I want to talk about, in my opinion, one of the best Superman stories ever told, beginning with Kryptonite Nevermore and going through to the end, the duel that destroyed the Earth. This is the story of the Superman Sandman. We called it that as kids, Superman Sandman Saga. Now this came out a year or so before I started buying comic books, but because I had older brothers, and just as importantly, they had friends, I was able to get quite a few comic books added to my collection very quickly. My brothers didn't want them anymore, and their friends didn't want them anymore. I was able to go around our house, and the first few days I decided I was going to start collecting comic books. I was about 11 years old, and I had a collection of about 30 comic books by the time I finished walking around the house gathering them up. After that, my brother's friends sold me a lot of their stuff. So just because I wasn't actively collecting when this book was out, I have always had access to this particular issue and most of the saga. Completing the run of these Superman was a challenge back in the pre-internet days. It took me until the early 80s to be able to find all the issues that I could afford of this saga. So what this does is a little bit of background. A couple of things about me first. I am not a comic expert. I don't claim to be. I'm simply a guy who's been reading comics for 50 years. Now, that does give me some level of knowledge, and that's all I'm going to pass on. I don't want to talk about writers and artists fighting each other or hating each other. I want to talk about the books and how they impressed us and what we felt about them when they came out and what my friends and I discussed. That's the entire point of this channel. So to that end, Kryptonite Nevermore. DC in 1971 was looking to go a new direction. Their sales were not struggling, but they were feeling some impact from Marvel. Marvel, as we all know, serialized their comic books. They go from month to month with a continuing story, sometimes ridiculously long. I remember leaving the Hulk at one point in the late 70s because the story arc had elements that had been going for 2 and 3 years, and I was just tired of not having answers. But DC had never really done that. DC, you could just pick up an issue, read it, and it really didn't matter in continuity, for the most part, where it landed. Well, in 1971, they decided to try to change that a little bit, and they did that with Kryptonite Nevermore. In it, there's an experiment that happens on Earth that Superman, it's involving kryptonite to power some device, and the kryptonite device explodes, and Superman gets a face full of green K, and we think he's in trouble, but he's not. It turns out that all the green K in the Earth has been turned to iron. So Superman no longer has to worry about kryptonite. The only thing he's vulnerable to at that point is magic. Now, it's important to note, too, that this is only kryptonite that was on Earth at the time of the chain reaction. So any kryptonite brought back to Earth or elsewhere in space is still quite active. Note the outline of the Superman where he landed in the sand. So, let me go in now. I almost forgot. I'm going to say it now before I get past page 5. I'm going to have spoilers. In fact, I'm going to tell how the story ends. If you want to read this on your own, you haven't read it in the last 50 years, please tune out now. There will be spoilers. So going forward, SSPs. I had some of those. Those were great. In this issue also, Clark Kent's no longer the mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper. He becomes a TV anchorman with absolutely no training. He's handed a camera and said, go be a TV anchorman. And he does. Comics. I come to this page because there's some bad guys trying to hijack a rocket that Clark is covering. And this is the famous page where Superman eats the chunk of kryptonite. I enjoy this. I remember seeing this actually in, I believe it was Newsweek, when this was out. My parents read Newsweek, and I believe I saw an article with these couple of panels in it in there. This is a very famous thing, and it was a big deal at the time. Superman no longer vulnerable to kryptonite. So we're going on through the story, and Superman's dealing with some bad guys trying to steal the rocket. As you can see, I've loved this comic to pieces. But it ends with the epilogue, and Superman's outline in the sand gets up and walks away. What the heck has happened? That gives us our next part of the extended story. Then we also have some Tales of Krypton as a backup feature in the book at the time. So, pretty neat. Then we go to the second one. This is where Superman's finding his powers are cutting out. Inexplicably, he doesn't have his invulnerability or his strength, or he can't fly. And they just fizzle out at inopportune moments, and he has to figure out ways to continue being a hero while his powers aren't reliable. This is part of the great depowering at DC in the early 70s. We also saw Supergirl's powers become sporadic. We saw Green Lantern's powers become unreliable. And we saw Wonder Woman become essentially Emma Peel. It was interesting. It was a time that I think they were trying to bring their characters' power levels down to what Marvel was, and not have Superman literally be able to juggle planets. And I get it. I get why they did it, but they didn't need to do it. This was Denny O'Neil who was writing these at the time, and of course the fabulous Kurt Swan was drawing them, and Neil Adams covers. So it's hard to go wrong with that team. So here we go. Superman again is How to Tame a Wild Volcano is this story where he has to deal with the fact that his powers are cutting out. And he's finding out that this sand creature is taking the powers from him. Then we go on to the next issue. He deals with a magical adversary who has the Devil's Harp. This is kind of neat. We have a little bit of power cut out in this one. But it was neat that we had something underlying these Superman story arcs. That it wasn't just Superman going around and having to be clever to outwit somebody because he was so powerful he's never challenged. They gave Superman physical challenges in these. In this one, Planet of the Angels, we get an interesting little story where Superman may or may not be in the Planet of the Angels. Now this one kind of takes place, it's still in sequence with these, but it doesn't have much to do with the power outage. This one does, Superman, Enemy of Earth. Some kind of space radiation has caused Superman, when he's near people, the people turn into these monsters. Oh, it's scary. And so Superman again has to deal with that. One thing he finds is that if he touches his sandy doppelganger, that takes out the radiation. So the hand that touches them takes out the radiation. So Superman's trying to figure a way to get this radiation out so he can still keep people safe, but he can't figure out how to do it until he just decides to ram into the doppelganger, and then he's able to get rid of the radiation and save Lois. This was a full-length story in this book, which is pretty cool. And here we go, Superman and the creature talk. So it's kind of neat. I loved that it was an ongoing thing. I was really excited when I was finally able to collect all of these. Again, not an easy thing to do pre-internet. Again, we have the Menace at 1,000 Degrees. Superman's dealing with being weakened. Here he is. He's struck by a torpedo, and he's actually winded. And he bemoans how a month earlier he wouldn't have been bothered by that. So it's becoming a real problem for him in his career. Oddly enough, this was touched a little bit in Justice League that Denny O'Neil was writing at the time, but not a bunch. But it was touched on almost not at all in Action at the same time. So then we come to a reprint issue. DC was famous for these. Not complaining. It's my favorite story with Superman and Lex Luthor. I really enjoyed this one. So going past it, though, we get to Superman having more and more problems with his powers cutting out. People are realizing there's something wrong with Superman. Headline is Superman fails. He couldn't save a building from being destroyed by fire. The underworld decides it's going to try to take advantage of it. Bad guys shoot him with a gun, and 3 shots, he falls. He's still not completely out. Now we get a little tie-in to Wonder Woman. I Ching, Wonder Woman's mentor, the guy who taught her karate so she could go from the most powerful superhero in DC, or one of the most powerful superheroes in DC, to becoming Emma Peel. The Emma Peel phase was not my favorite in the Wonder Woman era, by the way. They're okay, but I like Wonder Woman having her powers. So here Ching is trying to find out where his powers are going, what's going on with him. He wants to take a look at his spirit and see what's wrong with it. And a bad guy hits Superman while he's vulnerable with a gun. This gives Superman some brain damage that is important to the next issue. So here we have a depowered Superman taking on the bad guys and defeating them. Thank goodness his suit is super tough, or that would have ended Superman right there. Now we go to the Shape of Fear. What we're finding out is that the Superman Sandman is actually a creature from an alternate universe called Quard. And as a Quardian, he came into our universe without form and took the form of the Sand Imprint. And as a Quardian, he is existing in our universe and wants to be Superman. He doesn't want to go back to Quard and go back to being just a spirit. He wants to stay here. Superman, for his part, took a blow to the head last time, and he's having a problem. He's got a brain injury. He's not acting like himself. He is suffering from brain damage. So here we are. We find out a creature from the realm of Quarm, and he's injured from Superman touching him before, but he wants to stay. He has every right to life, he feels, just as Superman does. Well, there's another gap to Quarm there. And for... so Quarm, and the gap from Quarm, the spirit that comes out of there, animates this big, scary-looking demon thing from a local parade. So Superman and the Sandman Superman have to deal with the creature, but it's pretty strong, and it knocks Superman out. So again, a neat little Superman reprint. And then we go to the duel that destroyed the Earth. Superman and the Sandman figure have it out with them. So here we are, the ultimate battle. I had this copy for the longest time without a cover, which is a shame because it's a great cover. And this is how I saw it when I first opened it. So I had this forever without a cover. So Superman's in a pretty bad way, getting his butt kicked by a couple of guys living down by the train depot, and this big creature. They are able to, Sandman comes in and starts fighting the creature, but he's not up to the task either. In the meantime, Superman's having a little brain surgery to get rid of the injury so he can go back to being Superman. So here we are, they're fighting the creature from Quarm. The Quarmian says, hey, wait a minute, I don't need you guys. And in a rare moment of DC, during the Comics Code era, these two guys get killed. So here we are. The Quarmian's going to come and get Superman while he's in his hospital bed. Jimmy Olsen and the depowered Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, are going to stop him. And that goes about as you'd expect. There goes Jimmy. There goes Diana. Superman gets plucked out of the bed, but he wakes up. So they're able to fight the Quarmian. Superman and Sandman team together. And they get the Quarmian to go back to the dimension. And the Sandman says, hey, wait a minute. I have as much right to exist as you. I'm going to fight you for your life. So they're going to fight. I Ching gets there and he says, okay, I will go ahead and I'll negate the explosion effect if you two touch, and you can go ahead and fight. The next few pages are a really good fight between two Supermen. They bore through the Earth, they knock each other out into space, and ultimately they destroy Earth, which is pretty cool. I remember reading this when I was about 12 years old, just thinking that was really neat. And then, of course, it turns out that it was just the hypnotic state that I Ching had put both of them into to make them realize that the only loser in a fight between them would be Earth. So the Quarmian says, you're right, there can't be two Supermen here. I'll go back to the alternate universe, and you can stay here. And he leaves with some of Superman's powers. It's never really addressed again. I've always assumed, as a reader who made excuses for plots that were forgotten, that the powers eventually just restored to Superman by him being on Earth and under Earth's yellow sun. But the idea here was that it did take some of his power, and Superman says, I've had too much power, I can make mistakes, I don't want or need more. So the Quarmian leaves with the Superman power. And that's the end of the story. Now, this was an outstanding time in Superman. Curt Swan was at his absolute greatest. Denny O'Neil wrote a really good story here. I enjoy this immensely. I still take these out and read them at least once a year. These are some of my favorite comic books. I understood what DC was trying to do, and in fact, they continue it in Superman under Denny O'Neil. When he starts dealing with Terror Man in the next few issues, he is another power glitch. I may do a video on those, because those are some of my favorites too. Love Terror Man. But this was a fun time to be reading Superman. And as I said, I wasn't into Superman yet, but I got there very quickly. And these were some of the first Superman I read. It took me years to get every part of the story, but I was eventually able to do it. I recommend, if you have an opportunity to read the Superman Sandman saga, it's been reprinted a couple of different times. It's a great story. I really recommend reading it. It is a little dated because it was 50 years ago, but that doesn't bother me in the least. These are the comic books that I started out with, and I'll always love them. So that's really all I have to say about this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll be doing more comic books down the line. And if you have any suggestions or ideas of comics I can cover, I primarily am a DC and Marvel collector, and primarily my collection goes from the late 60s into the mid 90s. So anything pretty much in that range, I probably have at least read, if I don't actually own every bit of it, but I could probably do something on it. So if there's anything in there you want to see, let me know. I am going to vary these between DC and Marvel. I'm not going to do a ton of one against a ton of the other. I'm going to try to flip-flop it, make it pretty even. So that's all I've got to say today on page 121. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.